This is the Quarry. We're here on Xbox Series X taking a look at this really cinematic focused horror experience. So be sure to like the video, subscribing is great as well. So what are we getting here on the platform? It's a dynamic 4K resolution. Should be basically native 4K almost the whole time because it's 30 FPS. There is HDR support, and there are a number of different ways for you to play this game. So there's also a streamer mode if that matters to you. And I've also turned off the music just in case there's any other issues that pop up. So this game is quite neat in the sense that you can play this alone. You do all the different characters and everything like that. There's a movie mode that you can choose to do. There's a couch co-op mode. And then there's supposed to also be an online multiplayer experience that is coming down the road, but it is not available yet. So hopefully that is something that we will get to enjoy in the future. Well, the near future here. So you are a bunch of kids at a summer camp. So we're going to try to keep things spoiler free for at least a bit, and then I will do a warning and kind of let you know if when we dig into something a little bit more spoiler-esque, because it's really hard to review this particular one if you don't talk about the spoilers to a degree as well. So we're going to start with just kind of, very lightly touching on the story and then go a little bit more in depth. So you are a group of counselors, you're at a summer camp, and there's mysterious stuff happening. So this is the prologue. So we get our first look at two characters from the game, and it's just like a very typical horror setup. You've got, these individuals chatting, it's spooky, it's dark, they're supposed to be headed somewhere, and it just sets the stage for the game. Now, this game does a very good job of an initial opening, of really setting the mood, letting you learn about the characters and the setting and the place, and then the horror elements start. Now, I didn't really love the direction in regards to what type of horror this became. It was, I was expecting more of like a slasher horror film kind of thing, style, but it didn't really go in that direction. So it wasn't necessarily as intriguing as I was kind of hoping, as it becomes very obvious what you're dealing with pretty quickly on. So I will say that the visual quality of the game is phenomenal. The facial capture, the motion capture, it looks great. The character models are spectacular. These are real, actors, real characters, real people being represented within this game, and I think they did an amazing job with it. Now, with this being Unreal, there is at times a slight delay where you'll see textures kind of load in, particularly with like blood on people's faces, or little stuff like that. It seems mostly character model wise, not exactly environments. Environments seem all pretty good going. So this is a game where you are kind of along for the ride. There are many moments where you get to control the characters and what they're doing, but for a lot of it, you're sort of watching what's happening, doing quick time events. It's a it's sort of like a choice-driven experience. And there's something, I believe the number is 186 different possible endings that can happen depending on your choices, your reactions, and what goes on. So there is replay value in that sense. Now, from what I understand, and I haven't been able to find any option for this, you can't skip settings or scenes. So replayability wise, that might be really, really annoying to do. But if you do like the story, or you want to revisit the story, maybe even a couple years down the road, I think that in itself is worthwhile, because there is completely different scenarios for what can happen. And that in itself is kind of fun. The character performances, outside of motion and whatnot, all great. I actually really like the cast. A good variety of individuals. They've all got different issues and problems. Some of the narrative spots felt a bit out of place at times, if that makes sense. Like you make one choice, a couple choices that are similar, but yet you kind of get nudged in a certain direction. There's a segment where you kind of do a flashback, which really kills the pacing. This is a several hour experience I found, and your time should be similar to mine because it is mostly cinematic driven. So keep that in mind. I should also mention that since this is like widescreen, the resolution will, you're not getting like a full resolution screen if that makes sense, like the black bars. So that's kind of how that goes. And then this is like some of the walking you'll see. It just kind of, again, it's a prologue, so it's good to showcase this because it doesn't spoil anything, and it kind of teases what's to come. It sets the stage. It allows you to get a feel for things. It's a neat experience. And it's split into chapters. So the chapters kind of work in the sense that you get like this lady that's kind of, if you collect these cards, these tarot cards, you can get readings and kind of teases as to what's coming next. And then from that chapter, you jump into the experience and you start playing and making choices and going along the road. It's quite interesting in that regard. It really is just you're constantly being reminded, hey, this choice has an impact or whatever. And I thought that was really, really cool.
Thanks,
I quite liked what they were doing there with that. I thought that was kind of it's neat. It's sort of like if you've played Telltale games or if you've played Until Dawn, which, obviously the same folks here behind this one. And Until Dawn is a really, really great game. I love that horror title. It's very, very well done. So we've got 9 camp counselors, each with their own backgrounds and their own fates, and you really do decide kind of who lives, who dies, what's going to happen. You explore and you make these choices, and it's really, really quite interesting in that regard, because I like these games quite a bit. This style of interactive games. I think it's kind of neat because it's this meld between movies and games, and it works really, really well for that concept of it. And I thought it was a fine game. Like story-wise, it's okay. You get a decent amount of gameplay out of it. But I also know this won't be for everyone, and I did again have some issues with the narrative structure. It wasn't quite as, profound or intriguing as I thought it would be. But at the same time, it's pretty good. Again, I like the characters, I like the style, I like the performances, I like the visual quality of it. Great set of different scenes and locations that you end up visiting. You really do kind of get behind the different individuals and their perspectives as you try to make it through. And it's almost seamless, too. I didn't really notice too many or any really, like, loading screens. And, it's got lots of different themes to it as well. Some romance stuff, some kids just kind of having troubles out in the forest, which is kind of funny. Well, forest, the lake, the old cabin, lots of different places you can end up. And it's definitely modern. And I think they handle that well too. And there's some pretty cool characters that come in too, just in regards to some of the individuals that you meet along the way. There's lots of different faces outside of the 9 counselors, and you get to play as each of the counselors, so you can get like a focus, and it switches back and forth between them in different ways depending on the scene, and they do different pairings with the group, and like all horror type things, people get split up and have to look for clues, and it doesn't really go well for anyone involved ever. I think there's maybe a tarot card the other way. I don't know. We're just kind of going along here just to show this off. Because, again, like I've, just recently did this whole thing. So, but if you go off the beaten path slightly, you might find something that surprises you. You might find a secret collectible. You might find something that you need to acquire. Now, I did notice also for chapter replay that apparently it resets your whole playthrough when you do a chapter replay. So it would have been cool if you could have just started from a chapter and then went forward instead of like removing your entire save with your choices. And I kind of also wish there was maybe some sort of like infographic thing that's like, oh, this person, blah blah blah. Like it gives you a what happened, and then there's like a long credits that you can't skip, which has like a podcast, which I really like. It tells you context into what happened, but it was kind of annoying to sit through the long credits, to be honest. Yeah, wasn't a huge fan of that. And they do have a lot of psychological horror in this, and it's, you know, like a bit of a slasher thing. It's a bit gory. You know, it's a mix of different things, and I think that's kind of intriguing. So let's jump in and let's talk a little bit more spoiler-esque, while still kind of keeping things surprising, I would say, for those that want to play it. So the big twist here is that, you know, it's about like werewolves, essentially. So you get to see the different transformations, the effects, how everything happens in regards to a werewolf bite or a werewolf scratch. And again, like thematically, it's a bit odd because, you know, they have this big flashback where you get to see a couple characters that you don't see for a while, and it was just sort of like, it really killed the pacing for me. Flashbacks are really hard to do well. Like, it provided really, really good lore on the area, the people in this area, because there's more than just the counselors. There's other people. You don't play as anyone other than the counselors, but, you know, there is like a whole background of people that are part of the scene, part of this setup. You're going to see one of them in just a second here as we drive up this road, as she is terrified. I also love how there's lots of like eye movement, character expressions. It's very, very neatly done. And for the most part, it's quite well in regards to there not being too much clipping or anything on clothing and hair and stuff. I thought that was really good. So yeah, the whole werewolf thing, and then it's also kind of like, you know, who's really bad, who's really good. It kind of seemed a little lackluster, a little less interesting as things kind of progressed. I got a little bored of some elements of it, if that makes sense. Like, I still enjoyed it overall, but I would say I definitely had some thematic and narrative issues where I was kind of like, like it is a classic horror thing. They do these fun tutorial type things a couple times to teach you the moves, because, you know, sometimes you gotta run, sometimes you gotta hide, sometimes you gotta shoot. I would say it's very impressive in terms of the different things you can do, but it's also not necessarily designed in a way to perfectly allow you to more easily replay what you want to replay on this. And that's something where I kind of have some slight issues. Like I said, it's fun, it's unique, it has all the markings of a really, really good, iconic horror experience, especially at the start, and it just kind of like, I think it really weaves off is the biggest issue, is that, you know, it doesn't really kind of hit the mark for me perfectly. I think it's a good playthrough. I think you get your value out of that. I don't know if I'll sit here and replay it again, though, because it's, you know, there's different choices and things can get changed wildly, but maybe not to the degree where I'd be like, oh, it's a big shocker or something. Like, I would maybe sit here and do, like, a movie mode with someone that hasn't played this game, and we could, like, watch it together. Or the couch co-op might be fun. Or, you know what, maybe even the online multiplayer might be a riot. I actually think that could be really cool. But as I was saying, you know, the online multiplayer at the time of the review is not functional, it's not online. So I really don't know how that works. I do like games that try to do something, you know, of this design. I think it's neat. I think it gives you a lot of choice, and it really makes it feel like a personalized journey through a horror film or movie. Well, in this case, a game. I think it's got some neat balance between you doing character movement and you watching, but just keep in mind that there is quite a bit of watching, quite a bit of watching in cinematics. It's very heavily focused on that. So don't
You're not gonna make it to Haggett's
really
Quarry.
expect to be like doing a whole lot of
Not
like
tonight.
gameplay moving around, detective stuff, because you're more moving through these small kind
Carpenter
of hub
Motel.
worlds occasionally. Like
Thursday.
it's mostly
Bump into
quick
Barry.
time events,
Okay.
which is what this type
I
of
think we're just
game
gonna stick to the plan,
is
sir, and hope
supposed to be
Mr.
like.
Hackett knows we're coming
And it is
even if
dark.
we call
It's a
him.
very
No,
dark game,
ma'am. You're
but I
gonna
mean
head to the
it's a
Harbinger
horror title,
Motel.
so
Do you
almost all of
understand?
it is at night, and anything that isn't at night is
Okay, fine.
still
Yeah,
pretty
we'll
dark
head
in
to the
tone.
motel.
But they
Understood.
have fun with it. You do some
I was
different
just one
things. I would have
small
liked
detail.
also more like setup. Like there's times where I was in certain places and I'm like, okay, maybe if I open this door, it'll come
Only
around
the answers
later.
we're lost. Come with me.
Didn't ever seem to happen. And again, like with so many wildly different choices that
Alright,
could
man.
pop up,
Step out of the vehicle.
I think
Like what?
it makes sense that
I just
maybe
wanna
I
show
just
you.
didn't see some segments.
Get
I
to the
don't know.
motel.
So I think it's good. I don't know if
Okay.
it's great. It has good moments. It has fun action. It has good horror. I still
Son,
kind of was left
remain in the
wanting a little
vehicle.
bit more from it, though, I would say.